With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, Exploring More podcast friends, allies. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm with SJ. Countrymen. I'm with my friend SJ, and we're talking about the warrior stage. We're talking about the stages of masculinity, and we've been exploring that. Took a break for a couple weeks to go on mission for the hearts of men at the Heart of Warrior Encounter. And last week we introduced this whole warrior stage, and there's just too much to do in one. We knew it, so we decided on the onset that we were going to give 2 podcasts to this stage. Very important. I don't want to do a bunch of review because it's just go listen to podcast number 1 on the warrior in the masculine journey, and we tried to explore so much there. But this podcast, we wanted to explore a little more of the book, The Heart of a Warrior, because it's
about the warrior.
It's a book. It's 278 pages,
it's a whole book.
80-some thousand words about what it is to be a warrior in the kingdom. And if those of you who've seen the book and read the book, you know the subtitle is "Before You Can Become the Warrior, You Have to Become the Beloved Son." And we're working our way towards that stage of boyhood and belovedness.
Yeah, it's an affirmation of what we've been talking about in this whole series about the stages of the masculine journey that really, and we started with the sage stage because we want to work our way backwards. I like your philosophical answer a lot better than my practical one, that we do want to, it's really true. We want to work our way backwards to boyhood because we believe, that's the headwaters for so much of our, the joy that we find in life and so much of the challenge that we've experienced goes back to that headwaters.
Sadness.
And you cover that in the book here, Michael. The first part is all about the beloved son. And we've had guys come up to you and come up to us and say, man, 8 chapters about being the beloved. I'm like, okay, I get it, man.
I circled the airport one time too many.
I don't think you did at all.
I got a little redundant, but you know why, SJ?
Yeah.
It was... Yeah. Before I left it, I just so want them to know the restoration that Jesus needs to do in every man's life at the foundation, at belovedness, is so critical that if you try to go to war with a compromised foundation in the spiritual realm, the enemy's going to kick your tail.
There is nothing like battle to expose your... whether you want to call it weaknesses blindside or whatever it is, the battle will bring that out in a heartbeat.
Yeah. When Jesus said in Luke chapter 4, I think, when he's given the scroll of Isaiah to read in the synagogue, he goes to Isaiah 61. The Messiah has come to heal the brokenhearted, set the captives free, sight for the blind, freedom for the oppressed. I'm here. That's what I'm here to do. That's not a physical realm reference, though it played out in the physical realm. At that point, it's like Jesus put his helmet on. I'm all right. I'm going in. If he had a helmet, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no more, in the last episode you talked about Palm Sunday and its significance. That was, before that, it's kind of keep this to yourselves, let's keep this on the down low, and
for as long as possible.
As long as possible. But then there comes a time where you stand up in front of everybody and you tell them that you're the Messiah. That's what he was doing in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody who wants to throw a rock at this woman, he who's cast the first stone, right? He who's without sin. Yeah, that's it. He who's without sin. You throw first.
I dare you. I triple dog.
What kind of man makes, all these guys drop the rocks? He's absolutely fierce and kind and courageous and strong and tender. And so, we're giving attention to the warrior because there is a spiritual battle going on. We're in it. I was talking with some guys at lunch today about how, interestingly, we, myself, and the church, we just want to kind of decorate this prisoner of war camp. We want to hang a few posters, maybe put an old flower in the corner. We want to make it as comfortable as possible. It's just really It's not just a Western thing or church in the West. It's our longing for Eden, but we're not there.
Right.
We're outside the garden.
We are.
Outside the garden, Revelation is clear. There is a dragon, and he's gone to make war on the sons and daughters of God.
Yeah.
The woman's offspring.
And it's not going to be right again until Jesus returns.
To end it.
Yeah.
To end the war.
And, I mean, there's swords, there's, what did you say? It's either sewn on it's embroidered on his robe or it's tattooed on his thigh, depending on
the theological references
I'm
of that.
a fan of the tattoo one, but I mean, it's dipped in blood. I mean, he's coming to
it says
fulfill.
King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And so I love our exploration of this, the masculine journey. We live there. Our ministry, our mission lives there with men and women. There's a version of this with women that we'll have to get into someday.
Oh, yeah.
And explore. At the beginning,
have our brides in to
yeah,
talk about
at the beginning of the Heart of Warrior book, I remember back in a few years ago in writing it, there was, we talk this way. I mean, this quote found me, and it was so profound that it found its way into the cover of the book. And it's a quote by Sitting Bull. Warriors are not what you think of as warriors. The warrior is not someone who fights, because no one has the right to take another life. The warrior for us is one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who's that sound like?
Sounds like Jesus to me.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves, and above all, I mean, we couldn't provide for ourselves. I mean, this is so gospel, I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Those who cannot provide for themselves, we couldn't do it. He had to do it for us. And above all else, the children, the future of humanity. And Jesus had a few things to say about how we should treat these little hearts.
Sure.
It would be better if a millstone was tied around your neck and you cast into the sea rather than hurt one of these little ones. I mean, that's an avenger. That's a defender. That's a superhero for sure.
Yeah.
And so Sitting Bull is talking about what a warrior is, what a warrior does. And when we wrote Heart of a Warrior, we were seeing more and more that men can be rallied. Men can be encouraged. Men can be very much, they want a cause. They want to matter. They want something to invest in, fight for, engage with. But that's back to the foundation. If you don't have this foundation, your heart settled in love, being loved by God in a way that transforms you, the enemy's going to come and poke you right in that space that you're vulnerable.
Sure. Yeah. To circle back around to why you wrote the book the way you did, Michael, if you don't start off with knowing who you are,
right,
then when you go into battle, you're going to fight bravely and die quickly. That's why Matthew 3:17, many of us are familiar with it. A voice from heaven said, "This is my son whom I love and whom I am well pleased." And then Matthew 4:1, the very next verse in the next chapter, then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. So he's got to know who he is. He's got to know
that's great.
What his identity is and who has that belief in him, that he's proud of him, that he loves him before he goes off to fight the battle. Because if he doesn't have that, it's not going to go well.
And as you go into Luke and you go into Matthew and you go into the commentary in those Gospels about what Satan says to him,
the different ways.
If you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you're so right. If you are. So it's identity.
The Son of God turned the stone into bread.
And he turns a little bit of that on Jesus, and Jesus turns it back and defends not only himself through his answers, but also exposes Satan for the questions. It's really, really, really good. It's so much. There's so much more in there. And I think, SJ, it's a great thing to bring up. It's a great way to fight, to learn how to fight, to know what we're up against. I mean, these are things that we put in the Heart of a Warrior on the other side of belovedness. And we'll talk about that in a few weeks on the masculine journey, boyhood, and this foundation of being loved. I never forget back to Gary saying, for so many years, I was trying to be a good boy, and what I really wanted was to be a loved boy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember when he said that, I was like, my gosh, that's what I want. But that's what the enemy...
And it sent him to tears, too.
Yeah, when he said it, and the rest of us when we heard it.
No doubt.
And I think that my point in bringing that up is the warrior must rise up because the enemy has come to steal, kill, and destroy something about every man's substance when it comes to their identity. He brings God into question. He brings you into question. And he'll bring others into question, all in order to somehow, some way compromise your heart, your spirit, your soul. And so that's why the warriors needed to go back and fight lost battles. Okay, just stay with me on this concept. Yeah. Going back, you don't live there and stay there. You go back to fight some battles with the truth so that you can go forward free. And when you've lost battles, they've left a mark. When you've lost parts of your heart, when the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy, when you signed some of those contracts with the enemy, they're binding.
Yeah.
So the only one way to recover them is to go with Jesus back.
Yeah, he can break
into those files. And there's a variety of ways to go back and to see your heart restored, to see, I mean, I wish I could give our listeners a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I was just thinking, so, I mean, what do you think comes first? Is it the willingness to do it, the awareness of the need? I mean, or is it all kind of mashed up together? And
yeah,
I mean, it just depends.
I'm going to go with awareness. You talked about in the last podcast, SJ, the guy who just doesn't know.
Right.
He doesn't know the effect that he's having on people. He doesn't know. And nobody's
I was that guy.
And nobody's been honest enough and loving enough to be honest with him. I mean, you can be mean to that guy and, write him off or even tell him off. But the loving thing I think that Jesus wants to do is show us through some of these encounters with relationships and other people. I mean, if your life is full of everybody else, everybody does this to me, everybody. Okay.
This always happens.
Something's not right. Either you're attracting that kind of relationship or friendship, or you're repelling other. I mean, it's the
lens you're looking at it through.
It's too wonderfully complicated to put it in a 1, 2, 3, and that's why a 1, 2, 3 system doesn't work.
Right.
And we tried not to write one, and yet we're offering. Chapters are linear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you move through this like mile markers. But we wanted friends to see. You have to be aware something's not right. You brought up Neil last week.
Yeah, like a splinter in your mind driving you mad.
Yeah, something's not right with the world.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with the world. Something's wrong. That's a great prayer. That's a great question, especially if you send that to the author who's writing the story.
Right.
And I love the idea that we can have that kind of access to Jesus and say, what is this? What's going on? And then I think, walking with Jesus, not a formula, not a system, but actually walking with Jesus is a whole lot better idea than a curriculum.
Yeah, so that's how the warrior walks, and the warrior kind of learns more and more how to do that. I mean, even though I'm almost 50 years old, and I have my own kingdom. We talked about that in the King stage. You and I both. I'm still learning how to fight some of these battles. I'm still adopting this position of what was that?
Yeah.
Rather than they always or that always happens or statements are closed-ended.
Yeah.
And they're not really going to lead to lead you to a place where you're going to have a conversation with Jesus about it. Even if you're a Christian and a believer, you've just closed the book on whatever that is.
And you really just limited the Holy Spirit's ability to train you.
Right.
Because a warrior has to be trained. It has to happen. You have to be trained in the ways of the kingdom. You have to be trained in what things are and interpreting and discerning them well. This is what Jesus was doing with these 12 guys. He was training them in order to entrust to them his power and authority. And he went 11 for 12. And that's a whole other story.
Right.
But that was the model. And I believe we're actually supposed to be more like them in being able to wield that power and authority and more like Jesus. The warrior has to know, as a king does, that you actually have the upper hand in this story. In the spiritual realm,
oh yeah,
he is the King of Kings.
Oh yeah.
Matthew 28, all authority's been given.
John 17.
Yes, all authority's been given to me, Jesus said, and then he shares it. Doesn't give it away. He actually shares it away with his friends, with his followers, and it implies we're going to need that. So when we broke the book into its 2 parts, that's where training to become a warrior. Okay, we've circled the airport a time or two in belovedness and being healed, and your actual healing is what's going to be needed. Actually, your healing is training for helping and assisting Jesus in the healing of others. And that's so good.
Yeah, it is. He's partnering with us that way. So, we've talked about it before. awareness does not equal healing.
Right.
Why do you think so many men just stop at awareness? Do they not know what to do next?
Yeah.
I mean, when these things get revealed, whatever they may be, these, wounds that led to vows, that led to agreements.
Yeah.
I mean, so often, and again, we're speaking, listeners, from this perspective of being, customers, consumers, just like you are, and trying to figure this out and walk this way more and more, right? So I remember being in a place where, I was aware of some things that I needed to work out or work on, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not going in there. So why do you think that happens?
I'm going to answer that profound question right after the break. Okay. How's that for?
That's great.
We got to take a break for a minute.
We need to take a break.
But I want to come back with that because that might be the $10 million question.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Between a man's living and really having a life. Yeah. So we'll go there in a minute. All right. When we come back. Hey, Exploring More podcast friends and allies. I want to bring your attention to something really important that we're offering in the new year. This podcast series is about our allies, and it was one of our allies, Haynes Maxwell, who said, when you're in a war, you better know who your friends are. And so when we step into the new year and into the battle, the war between the two kingdoms, the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light, we want to do all we can here at Zoe to help you in your journey and in the battle for your heart. So we want to invite you to go to www.zoe.org/allies. There you can find all kinds of resources, encouragement, a lot of free stuff that we want to put in your hands to equip you for your journey, but also to equip you as you go after the hearts of others. You're going to find also there a very important book deal. We want to give you The Heart of a Warrior in quantity, in bulk, at our wholesale prices, almost 50% off when you buy a box of books, a case of books of 26 or more, and the discount becomes more as you buy more books. We want to give you the best deal we can so that you can get The Heart of a Warrior into the hands and into the hearts of as many men as you can. Welcome back, listeners. Hopefully you were on the cliff hanging and you're still with us and you came back.
Just to refresh it again, why, myself included, you included, all men, it seems like, women too, but we're talking about men in the stages of masculine journey. Why do men so often stop at awareness and think that awareness is somehow healing? Okay, I know about how that coach wounded me. I know about how my mom wounded me when I was 7 years old, whatever. Yeah. And they stop there.
Yeah. I've experienced it often in the areas of counseling and receiving counsel. And I think that it's somewhat of a practice within clinical and Christian counseling, exposing what's wrong, exposing what's not right, or why something is the way it is. So you broke your arm. How did you break it? Oh, you jumped off something? Okay, don't do that anymore. So you're aware of something that happened. I'm not trying to be too simple here, but you're actually the idea that awareness of why something happened and that it happened and what the effect of it happening, that lie that's all that's needed to not be affected by that. You said it earlier, a broken bone and the need for it to be reset because it healed.
It's got to be set correctly.
It didn't actually heal improperly. It didn't really heal at all. It's not right. To be technical, it needs to be broken again and then healed right. And that's a work of God. So the awareness is a huge beginning. It's a huge part. We're not saying that it's not significant.
No.
X-rays are really important to seeing what happened and where it hurts and why it hurts. But that's different than treatment. To set that bone right, to cast it, to have our hearts cared for by Jesus. And even when the times I got hurt physically, I was still my mom and dad's son. There's a real wrestling match of, if God's good, why did he let that happen? My parents gave me permission to roam about the neighborhood, gave me permission to move and go. And so we talked about this all last podcast. This is a dangerous place. Mm-hmm. Predators, people who will use you, try to take advantage from their own sinful stories and wounded places. So without turning into that huge theological, philosophical question, there is bad things that happen. And we talked about in the last podcast, but God says he wants to make good. He will make good. He promises that all things will work for the good. So how do we go to him for healing? awareness is huge, and taking
It's really
that,
the first step.
taking that awareness that something's not right. And I think to have awareness, you're even suggesting, SJ, that somehow we're paying attention. So I'd say even previous to awareness is paying attention that there's something there, that this, I'm always here in this spot. I'm always left. I'm always rejected. I'm always hurt. I'm always...
I remember, and I think I've probably shared this story before on the podcast, but the first time I went to see a chiropractor, I went not because my back was a problem, but because my shoulder was. And I was taking probably, 3-4 ibuprofen a day, and it was kind of knocking it back, but not great, And I go into the doctor, and she says to me, so, what's your plan moving forward? Did you want us to try to help? Yeah, absolutely. Well, what have been the symptoms that you've been living with? And I said, well, there's, pain when I lift my shoulder this way, and when I, pick up that direction, and I put my bag, my briefcase over my shoulder. She said, well, stop doing that. But she said, how long have you been living this way? And I said, I don't know, probably, 2-3 years, something like that. And she looked at me just incredulously, like, why?
Yeah.
Why have you been living in pain all this time?
Yeah.
Pain is a negative thing. It hurts, right? But it's an indicator that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So when there's something wrong, why would you just live with it that way and try to self-medicate with ibuprofen? Come to the doctor.
Don't even
right?
get me started, because we're just
come to the doctor and get the healing that's necessary. And I did, and it took 1.5 years, right? But now I have a full range of motion in my shoulder and all that kind of thing, and I'm doing great. But I will never forget how she was baffled. Why would you live with this pain? And so many of us do.
Yeah. And there's indications, the woman who comes to Jesus who was bleeding, she had been to a few other phphysicians.
Yeah, it had been a lengthy deal.
So
the paraplegic by the pool at Bethesda.
I think we're
38 years or whatever it was.
We're on a series of 10 podcasts now that are coming. The series is growing.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the warrior. We're talking about healing. Okay, get back to on this track why we're even talking about this. We're talking about the importance and the significance of healing and experiencing the kind of healing that awareness starts, and coming to Jesus for healing and inviting him into the wounded spaces where the lies came, the wounded heart, and experiencing his love in that space.
There's a dissatisfaction. I don't want to live this way anymore.
We've tried we've tried memorizing verses. We've tried literally
praying harder,
and we've tried medical profession.
Yeah.
We've tried drugs. We've tried a lot of things. We've found that it is Jesus and Jesus alone that can heal these spaces. We just came from this conference, and we had this huge conversation. It was offline, but if you could forgive yourself, there is some power to that. But the idea that actually, is it you that has that power? Or is it a healing that you need to experience from God? A forgiveness from God, an exercising of forgiveness through God to the offenders and the predators in your life. Sooner or later, he's going to ask you to do that. That's kind of the end of your rehab.
Right.
But first, where's it hurt? What's hurting? And how long have you lived with that? And let me care for you. These are Jesus's words. These are Jesus's way. And I'm so sorry. Let me make that better. And so we're, there's got to be listeners who are going, yeah, it's not that easy. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's got some more steps and some more. I mean, we've talked about, but how free do you want to be?
Oh, it's a journey. There's no question.
My rehab after my knee was several physical therapy appointments, and I don't need crutches anymore.
Right.
I don't have the pain that I used to.
Yeah, I think
so. There's restoration. There is a recovery.
Right.
That happens.
God. You said it this past weekend, right? What was the quote that you said about God? God from Graham Cook. God will allow things in His wisdom that He could easily overcome in His power.
Yeah, prevent
in His power. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. We see it in Scripture. There's no doubt in my mind. I know it's happened for me and other people that I know that God can miraculously heal things.
Yeah.
But I really believe that more often than not, he wants you to take the journey of healing so that you understand. And there's probably way more to what is hurting you than you think there is.
And we're talking about this in the context, SJ, of warriors because
this is part of the battle.
Because a warrior is going to come across wounded people.
Yeah.
You want to get the enemy off of them.
You're going to be wounded.
And then you've got to be able, you want to be able to turn and care for them. Your training as a warrior is in how you can, think of a medic.
Sure.
A Navy SEAL medic. I mean, weapons against the enemy, and then turning and tender with the
bandages
victims
and
the casualties,
gauze,
and carrying them to safety, carrying them to the feet of Jesus and saying, here, I brought you another one.
This is what the warrior does.
And that's what the warrior, that is what the warrior is about. That's what the warrior does. And he knows because he's been the casualty.
Sure.
Somebody else helped him find safety.
He can look at that and say, come on, man, I had exactly that wound. Here's the treatment.
Well, I think about, again, sharing from the podcast, sharing our stories, sharing from the stage this last weekend. Mm-hmm. You use the word, you've talked about it in the podcast, for your year, this word, God's giving vulnerability.
I think it's probably going to end up being 5 years or 10.
We're going to get you a big V. Yeah. Not a tattoo, but a monogram. Put a big V in it. But think about how many guys came up to you after you talked about that.
Still, I'm getting emails.
That's what we're talking about. The training that you're experiencing in your warrior heart about how to overcome, how to live
more free,
trusting. Yes, you're not avoiding being betrayed. You just somehow are coming up with a scheme thinking that if I'm not vulnerable, I won't be betrayed. That has nothing to do. If somebody's going to betray us, they're going to betray us. And you think it's going to hurt less because you didn't
I don't give them some kind of ammunition by being vulnerable with them. They're going to find stuff if they're going to betray me. They're going to betray me.
But it's a strategy we've all come up with. And, and it's one that's keeping us from so many other things. Because you close off part of your heart to one kind of person. Guess what you did? You closed off part of your heart to every person. Yeah. The ones who really won't do that.
Right.
The ones who want to love you. And I'm speaking from experience, not pointing my fingers at you.
I'm with you.
I'm saying, hey, this is the warrior training. Healing first, your heart is so critical to being a good warrior in the kingdom and then eventually being a good king, where now that you have the ability to preside over environments, your will gets to be done and exercised in certain environments.
Right.
You make it as safe as you possibly can for everybody in your kingdom, small K kingdom, to be protected and provided for.
Yeah.
And you've learned that as a warrior. So that's why these all get connected. It's all very important. And this thing on your shoulder that hurts, it's affecting other parts of your body.
Oh, yeah. Half of what I had to work out in the healing of that was the other muscles that were compensating.
So physical realm is no different. It's the spiritual realm that actually works that way and plays itself out in the physical realm. So to sound like a cheap commercial, Heart of a Warrior is a book that is 270 pages about this. If this has any kind of intriguing or provoking or disrupting or inviting way to it, you may want to pick up a copy and begin to explore, how do I make a comeback? How do I see Jesus heal me, train me, and then turn me loose into the battlefield with him to go. What was the battle, the war film that came? Just one more.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, right.
Desmond Doss.
I got to go get one more.
Yeah. And he started praying, Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit.
Show me where they are.
Give me one more.
Give me one more. And so that's the cry of the warrior.
Sure.
That's the cry of the battle-tested and the one who's learned how the battle works. There are casualties everywhere. And friends and allies, we need more warriors.
Yeah, we need more medics, more oriented men
who have gone through healing with Jesus so that they can then partner with Jesus for the healing of others and fight for the hearts of others.
If you're not sure about the book and you want to kind of take it for a test drive, you can go to our website and to our store. We have a free section. You can download a free chapter there. You can also go on the YouVersion Bible app and you can download our devotionals there. Just go to the reading plans on YouVersion and search for the keyword Zoe, Z-O-W-E-H. So, Michael, one last question for you about this stage, and then in our next couple episodes, we're going to talk about the Ranger. Is the transition, I think what I'm hearing is the part of the transition from the Ranger stage, which is the one after the warrior or before the warrior.
Yeah, before.
And then it's boyhood after that or before that. The part of the transition from boyhood to ranger and then to warrior is, as you're transitioning from one to the other, you've got less and less of a inward, to use a phrase or a term that's been, thrown around a lot lately is this narcissistic kind of an attitude, right? Where the world circles around me. And as a child, you really should experience life that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But you transition from ranger into warrior, and it does become, you've got to be able to be healthy enough to offer some of this outwardly rather than inwardly.
Yeah. What's really paramount is who's guiding you through these transitions. When you have a mom and a dad who are good, oriented, they're not going to keep you from all the evils in the world. I mean, they can't. But if you have a mom and a dad, authority figures who can help you with those transitions and understand this journey your heart's on developmentally, I think, SJ, that's where those transitions from belovedness, where the world revolves around you, right? This holy narcissism that could be really good, to be so focused on and so well loved that you trust your mom and dad, you trust your Heavenly Father, for us later in the game, to take you into this next stage. That each stage, as it's been compromised, has to go back. You have to go back and recover what you didn't get, or recover what was stolen.
Yeah, or lost, or
arrested. That's right.
Yeah.
So otherwise there's a limp, and that limp is a shameful one rather than a glorious one.
Right.
I mean, what you recovered, you now have this beautiful memento of brokenness, that you're not broken anymore, but like you experienced on this last weekend, the men who are hurting in that particular area, they need to know a man who's overcome that with the help of God.
Right. It's all about hope.
And to give them some hope, right? I'm not mad because you got in the end zone. I'm glad that somebody got in the end zone.
Right. That means I might be able to
maybe
someday.
I could.
Yeah.
And when you toss the ball to me and say, hey, come with me, let me help you learn this way, that's so validating and so life-giving. And so the friends and allies that come to the events, they come with some kind of assumption that life's not right, but I heard Jesus is around here, and I want to know, I want healing. I want to connect with him in an intimate way. And that's really what we try to do at those weekends. And the scripts that come from that, we can't take credit for.
No, we couldn't write them.
I mean, I feel like we're more waiters and waitresses, just kind of setting tables, pouring water and coffee, and just saying, hey, while you're here, here's some things you might think about. Here's some things that we found. And I think Jesus will be along pretty soon. Just ask him, wait for him, connect with him. And for the warrior specifically, I think how we want to end this, SJ, is that your healing is critical to your training, and your training is critical to the hearts of others' healing. And that's why we need warrior men, right, who know what to do and can do it well.
Right.
And that comes through intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with Jesus. The Holy Spirit, right, last thing, the Holy Spirit, he's the trainer.
Yeah, he is.
He's the guide, he's the counselor, he's the teacher, he's the comforter. Let's go back to Miyagi. We don't always understand what he's doing.
No.
We think we're washing cars. We're actually learning karate.
Right.
Painting fences. No, you're learning.
You don't know that until you're looking back, though.
And that's the beauty of that kind of discernment. So I hope this is helpful. I think it's critical. And I hope that our friends, our allies will explore the Heart of a Warrior book. There's some other great resources. Gordon Dalby wrote a book called Healing the Masculine Soul, where he talks about these stages of masculinity. John Eldridge wrote a book called Fathered by God. You can get more of these stages. King Me will be out, hopefully, the end of this year. Well, we can explore some more.
Yeah, and there's the Heart of a Warrior. There's also the Heart of a Warrior journal workbook, which,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, you read the book and then journey back through a lot of these concepts, all of these concepts in the journal workbook, but it's designed to be done with even just one other man. And so much gets revealed in that. Yeah, it's a guide for your journey of the heart. I mean, there's so much gets revealed. I have to have other warriors looking at my life.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
saying, man, you made it into the end zone.
Yeah. The stage is not Lone Ranger stage.
Right. But
right?
If this had happened, right, you wouldn't have taken that shot across the knee or whatever if this had happened. I mean, just that fine tuning, that we can get into. We need other men around us. And so just as an encouragement, if you don't have a band of brothers, it doesn't have to be 10 guys. It doesn't have to be 6 guys. Find one other guy.
And maybe read the book together, the book, journal,
Start
workbook.
there.
There's a lot of cups of coffee in that thing, and just explore that together. We've seen some really cool stories around the country about men who, maybe they don't have a band of brothers, but they got one guy they can invite to, hey, would you explore this with me?
Right.
Can we do this together? I'm curious about how this looks in your life, and I'd love to share with somebody how this looks in mine, and I don't know until we get there, but what do you say?
Yeah.
And that's a vulnerable thing to ask, right?
It's very vulnerable,
But crazier things have happened.
No doubt. So in that vein, Michael, of brotherhood, band of brothers, and no man should walk this way alone, we've set up a network of allies. Visit zoe.org/allies. You can email Greg Sailors, greg@zoe.org. Email Jim Shanae. They both head up our allies department. It's jim@zoe.org. And talk to them about, there may be a group of guys meeting and going through the Heart of a Warrior that is right down the street from you, and you just don't know. So
and we do.
And we could know about them. So we'd want to connect you with that geographically. So send us an email.
I think let's just add, if you're listening to this and you do have a group, if you're looking for a group, email those guys. But if you have a group, if you have an environment that you've created somewhere in the country, email us and let us know,
so we know
that you meet weekly and this is your contact, because the Heart of a Warrior network, the Heart of a Warrior, is growing by thousands and thousands and thousands. What the YouVersion
just broke 180,000 subscriptions the other day.
And so there's a lot of allies that we want to help introduce you to. Some of those guys trying to move in the same direction. And so that's a great encouragement, SJ.
Yeah. So questions about the podcast or just for us in general, if you've got show ideas, email us at exploringmore@zoe.org. And hey, I almost forgot. This episode is our 50th episode. That's pretty cool.
So the first person that emails us with, you said to email, title it 50th episode.
Yeah.
The first person that gets in our inbox at
exploringmore@zoe.org.
Send us your shirt size. We'll get you a Heart of a Warrior t-shirt.
Yeah. We'll send you
Let's
a
do
shirt.
that. See what happens.
Yeah, man. It's been a trip. I can't believe we're at 50 already. All right. We'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about the Ranger stage.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.